What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Fall camp getting close to wrapping up. Install's pretty much done. They got a big scrimmage coming up on Saturday, and then from here on out, it's just pretty much a regular schedule for the next 2 weeks leading up to that game against Western Carolina. We're going to talk about everything that we've learned so far, and I'm going to allow you guys to ask questions really from the get-go, and you guys are going to kind of drive the show, see where the conversations goes. All that and more in today's episode of Hog Sports Live. Before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. Be sure to follow the page if you haven't done so already with 90,000 other Razorback fans. Also available on YouTube. Subscribe to the page. Hit the notifications bell so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos. I think we're up to like 16,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Most of the people who watch the show on YouTube aren't even subscribed. So go ahead and do that so you are notified because, guys, we're about to start on our regular schedule of Monday and Thursday, pregame previews, all that kind of good stuff. So it's going to be a pretty active show. So you're going to want to be alerted if you want all the latest intel on what's going on with Razorback sports. Also available on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't taken a moment to throw us that 5-star review, we would certainly appreciate that. And, of course, as I always say, show the video to your pappy. He doesn't have internet. He doesn't know about it. He's not an internet person. He's a big Hog fan, but he doesn't know. Just show him on your phone. Show him how to get to it. He wants to know. All right, everybody. Where do we start out? Alex Collins. Alex Collins' tragic passing. I mean, that one hits deep, especially with everything that's been going on. I mean, the last 4 months have just been just brutal. I mean, Chris Smith, Deion Stutz, the recruit who was committed to Arkansas, Ryan Mallett in June, and then Alex Collins. I mean, and Alex Collins, I mean, obviously – we've talked about all those tragedies and stuff, and Alex is the latest one. Man, motorcycles scare me sometimes. It's always, I mean, no matter how good you are at it, somebody can pull out in front of you, and it's a scary deal. Alex Collins was a special dude. I can remember when he was being recruited to Arkansas, it takes a unique person to jump 1,300 miles to Arkansas, all the way from South Florida. And he was the first guy when I started covering Arkansas sports over, it's been 20 years, but he was the first guy that I can remember could have gone to Florida, Florida State, Miami, all the big three Florida schools, and chose to come to Arkansas. And it was a major win in recruiting, and I can still remember watching his lacrosse videos, just how he was just kind of clowning on everybody. And he got up here. I remember his first press conference. No, it wasn't a press conference. It was just kind of a scrum all around him. And I remember after he got done, he was like, hollering back to his teammates, nailed it. He was just, just a different guy, just personality-wise. Obviously, a terrific talent. He was number 1 ranked running back in the country on 24/7 Sports, number 17 overall prospect nationally. So it was a big deal getting Alex Collins at Arkansas. And, if you go to his Twitter page, it's still, Woo Pig Suey for life. Back in 2016, it's still up there. So, thoughts out to him, his family, and I mean, I just feel like I'm saying that too much lately. So, no good way to segue from Alex Collins, but we are going to take your questions. Obviously, so far I don't have any comments, but I'm going to put up some video here of practice. I think this is maybe a couple days ago when they were in pads, maybe yesterday when they were in pads. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. So, I've obviously talked about, whether I think this is Sam Pittman's best team or not at Arkansas. I think it has a very good chance of being his best team when you look at the personnel top to bottom. Returning, a multi-year starter at quarterback in KJ Jefferson. Some argue that he's the best quarterback in the SEC. I think Saturday Down South had him ranked number 1. I think 24/7 Brad Crawford had him 1. I've seen him also, 3rd. Or lower. I've seen him lower than that on different stuff. So, but I think that at worst, KJ Jefferson's a top 3 quarterback for you. He's learning a new offense. That's been an adjustment for people. That's been an adjustment, not just for, wide receivers and quarterbacks, but blocking has been different. It's different for running backs. It's different for the offensive line. A lot of times a more pro-style offense is going to be more complicated, obviously, than, an up-tempo spread. So there are definitely nuances to the offense, and they should be wrapping up install here probably tomorrow. I would assume that's the last day. It might have been today, but I think maybe tomorrow will be the last day of install. Today was a bit of a shorter practice. I think they trimmed it off of about 40, 45 minutes or so. Thursday will be a full practice in full pads. Friday will be a lighter practice, and Saturday will be a scrimmage. I assume it's going to be closed to us. I'd love to go watch some of that, but I assume it's going to be closed. Just based on the last scrimmage, sound like the defense, maybe got the best of the offense, particularly getting after the quarterback. Now you have to remember that Jacoby Criswell and KJ Jefferson can move. They're good runners, and they're getting called down when somebody gets close to them. Probably not even tagging off on them, just getting close to them. So you have to keep that in mind that, they probably would have eluded some of that. But I don't know where the pressure was coming from exactly because, from reports that I've had from talking to people close to the program, inside the program, Sam Pittman felt like Andrew Chamblee did a really good job. Going back watching him on film, they were really pleased with him as he replaces Devon Manuel, who's been out for just a little bit. Should be back soon here. Hopefully by the scrimmage Saturday, he'll be back out there. But they felt like he's done well. I kind of was watching the tight ends the other day. I feel like they still have some work to do. When you get past Lucas, who I think's been pretty good, but Varkey's Gum still has some work to do as a blocker, picking up things. I think I don't know that it's fair to say it's been a challenge for him, but it's been he arrived late, so he's a little bit later to the party. But man, the talent that guy has catching the ball, I feel like they're going to have some real weapons in the passing game at tight end, wide receiver. Really been impressed with Andrew Armstrong here of late. Been impressed for a long time with Isaac TeSlaa. I was watching the running backs today. They were doing some drills, some blocking drills and stuff, and I was watching Rocket Sanders. He comes up on the screen here. And a couple of guys like I think DeBinion went first, and then some other back went first. Usually Rocket always first, and maybe I was just getting to in the middle of the drill. But they've got a GA holding a dummy, and I remember when Rocket went up there and hit that dude, and he just goes like you could tell he felt a little bit like his lungs went through his back when Rocket went up there and smacked him, and he was kind of coming away with a smile on his face. But you got Rocket Sanders back there. As long as you got Rocket Sanders, you've got a chance to do some big things. And I've liked what I've seen out of DeBinion. DeBinion's kind of been a big talking point out of camp just from the progress that he has made from last year. Embracing the weight room, just being in overall better physical shape. He's more of a stop and go spinning. He's got, what is it, the X button? I don't even know what the circle button, I guess, is a spin move. He's got a lot of ability like that, brings a lot of different things to the table. And I've been encouraged with what I've seen out of Dominic Johnson, too. Dominic had a really good scrimmage, had a nice long run. There was another play where he put his hand down. They called him down, but would have been another long run. Isaac TeSlaa had a good scrimmage, not even just from catching the ball, but from my sources within the program. There was one play where he blocked 3 people on one play. And they've been pleased with him. Talking also, like, I asked somebody within the team, like, all right, it's 3rd and 8. Where are you going with the ball? And the person told me, well, if you ask the quarterbacks, it's 4 and 9 and 2. So, but he said 4, 9, and 2. So that's TeSlaa, Lucas, and Andrew Armstrong. I'll tell you who else, man. Isaiah Satania has had a really good camp. Like, looks like a completely different player. Looks like somebody else out there. And he's had ability. He was just always, I don't know, kind of seemed more timid to me last year. And there is none of that anymore this year. He is aggressive. I think that he's going to have a really nice season, especially with the number of screen passes I expected them to throw, just based on what we've seen in practice. They're going to throw over the middle, as I've said before, but you're going to see screen passes. There's a lot of combo routes, as you can see on the screen. They're working on stuff now, rub routes, all those kinds of things. So it's going to be different. Maybe to the casual observer, they may not notice a lot of differences, but to people who are like diehard fans, you're definitely going to see some differences with this offense. Defensively, I've gone on and on about the defensive line. I just love the looks of this defensive line. It's a good-looking group with one guy after another. And, I've said before, now, there's somebody who's told me, like, there are 4 NFL defensive linemen. There are 4 NFL defensive linemen on this team. And that's what, kind of what Cody Kennedy was saying, offensive line coach was saying yesterday. Like, these guys are going – it's interesting to hear him say again, they're, going against SEC caliber defensive linemen. Like, well, I would hope that that's what they are because they're playing in the SEC. But, are they above that? Does SEC quality defensive lineman, does that mean an NFL guy? And, if I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, who's an NFL guy on here? I think Landon Jackson possibly. When you look at him physically – Trajan Jeffcoat. Actually, the pronunciation is Trajan. Trajan Jeffcoat. I've got another one for you too, speaking of pronunciations, but it's Trajan Jeffcoat. Cam Ball, is he an NFL guy? And then who else? Is it Tank Booker? Possibly. But you got 4 NFL guys, as they think, on the defensive line. That's pretty damn good. The other pronunciation I wanted to mention, because we've said Isaiah Augustave, all kinds of different ways. And usually a lot of times with somebody's name, if you don't know how to pronounce it, a lot of times it's just the smoothest way that it could possibly come out. So the way to think about this is Augusta National and add a V. Isaiah Augustave. Say it 3 times, use it in a sentence. You're going to need to remember his name because they're really high on him. They think he is just going to be like a stud for him in the backfield. So that's not the backfield's loaded. I mean, I mentioned Dominique and DeBinion, and I didn't even talk about AJ Green, of course, Rocket, but AJ's done some really good things out there too. But adding this freshman in there, and as I've said before, they feel good about the kid, like he's going to be a stud for him. Well, if he's going to be a stud for him at some point, he's going to be a stud right out of the gate, because every running back that I've covered in 20 years, and I can think back even farther than that, who has done anything at Arkansas has bit as a freshman. Everyone but Michael Smith, and he had a bad hamstring issue and redshirted his first year and later had a 1,000-yard season. But everybody else, they come in and they play right away. I mean, go back and look at it. Look at every back who's gone like 1,000-yard season. And as a freshman, if they were at Arkansas, they had a big freshman year. They jumped on the scene early. Secondary's definitely seen some shakeup here lately. I mean, I think we all expected Snacks Johnson to move over there. I knew when I saw Jaheim Singletary the first day, when I saw his feet and his explosion, his change of direction, I was like, all right, they got another corner. They can move Snacks. This ain't going to be a problem. They have to stay healthy. Got to stay healthy. I mean, in the secondary. There are some, secondary to me is maybe the thinnest area overall. I'm not 100%. Like, I know that Jaheim Thomas had a really good scrimmage also. Again, talking from people inside the program. This is like going after, watching the film. They put a lot on Jaheim Thomas to make sure that, they can count on him. I'm not just like sold on the linebackers, but I feel like they're going to be at least decent, and potentially good at linebacker. Those young guys are really coming on. And you may see Brad Spence and I'm spacing on Alex Sanford. You may see those guys a little bit, especially considering linebackers are good options to play on special teams. I'd like to see Manny Powell pick it up a little bit. Haven't seen Manny just really flash. Carson Dean, he did some good stuff in the spring. Haven't seen that same thing from him so far. So just a few of my thoughts here and there. I mean, I think the secondary is going to be better than they were last year. Nowhere to go but up, I know that. But there actually is 133 teams, so they could be worse this year, even though there were 131 last year. That was the total number of teams. But I think that they have got a lot of things figured out in the secondary, from camaraderie, from just coaching overall. I feel like this defensive coaching staff and these players have really bonded together very well. I think you can see it out there. So they need to stay healthy on the back end, secondary, linebacker, and defensive line. I mean, obviously they need to stay healthy, but I really feel like they could take a little damage and keep on ticking pretty good. It's a nice looking defensive front. Okay, where do we want to go? Yeah, some comments about Alex Collins. Bill Richards mentions prayers for his family and friends. Dewar Johnson says, just from the eye test, will the secondary be better? I think so. I mean, I liked the looks of their secondary last year starting out. I mean, having Jalen Catalon and Miles Slusher, I think both are good players. And I think if Catalon can stay healthy, he'll do big things for Texas. I mean, he's a very instinctive player. But I like Jaheim Thomas a lot, his potential. I think that Al Walcott has been maybe as big an addition as they've got, because they needed help at safety. I talked to Jaden Johnson today. I asked Jaden Johnson just point blank, I think you would agree with me that your sophomore year wasn't what you wanted it to be. I thought, you had a good freshman year coming off that and like looking to build off that, and sophomore year just kind of took a step back. But if Jaden Johnson can regain some form, Malik Chavis is another one. Like if Malik can take a step up, and these guys can be quality backups for you, then I think that'll help you a lot. But Hudson Clark is bigger. I don't know that Hudson Clark is an all-SEC player or anything like that, but I think he's definitely competent back there. He's not a guy that's going to make disastrous plays for you. He may not make a whole bunch of big plays, but I think he's a reliable guy back there. I think Walcott is a guy that people can kind of rally around. He's kind of got that personality. Snacks isn't much of a talker in a press conference. If you watch the press conferences today, he's not much of a talker there, but he is on the field. He definitely – and it's not like negative trash talk. It's just kind of like messing with your buddy kind of stuff. Counting when they do push-ups after they drop a pass or something, like counting off their push-ups, those kinds of things. So I do think that they will be better. I think Jaheim Singletary is a real talent. And Dwight McGlothern, Dwight potentially has NFL ability also at the other spot. 6'2" corners. I think Snacks has got what it takes to fit in there at the. I asked Snacks, I was like, it's a difficult position to play, taking on blockers in the screen game, tackling running backs, covering slot receivers. And he said, difficult? I don't know if that's the word. It's like you just kind of have to be a ball player. But that's kind of what I meant. It's not like, getting all your assignments down and stuff like that. It's just being instinctive and being a player. That's what kind of guy has to go in that position. I feel like players kind of gravitate away from that spot. Like corners don't want to be a nickel. You know what I mean? But that's always been true. Like safeties don't want to be linebackers. Linebackers don't want to be moved to defensive end. There's always some resistance there because you want to be big for your position, right? And I always kind of felt that way with nickel. But to me, nickel is such a star highlight position nowadays. You're asked to do so many things. You can play nickel back. It's not like back in the day, it seemed like, 4-2-5 was a college thing, and NFL was, more of a 3-4, 4-3 league. But now that's a position that people recruit. I don't know that we have like a ranking category for that position, but I think we should, because those guys used to be viewed as tweeners a lot of times. Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? Is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? That was kind of viewed as a tweener spot, and those guys didn't get ranked that high. You'll see guys that are ranked 5-star, Clint, Stacy Patterson, what's your opinion of the O-line and our wide receivers? Will they be able to slow the pass rush? And can the receivers get open quick enough? I like Arkansas's receivers. I think they're going to be in good shape there. And they got a guy that can get on the ball in KJ Jefferson. The offensive line, Manuel's been out for a little bit. I think the offensive line I think Manuel has so much upside. And, from what I've heard in camp, like they think he has the chance to be like really, really good. Like maybe as good as, their second best offensive lineman on the team this year. Kudus on the other side, I thought Bo Limmer put it well. Run blocking is run blocking. He's just devastating people run blocking. But pass blocking is something that he's got to get used to, being on the edge versus, in the spring, he was mostly at center and guard. The last 5 or so practices, he was at tackle. So he's been out there, but Kudus is a very young guy. Some guy was like I was talking about, like Kudus is young, all this stuff. He's got I think this guy who has all these negative comments on my show, he's probably going to see this, but he's just like, quit making crybaby excuses for Patrick Kudus. Like, what kind of jerk comment is that? Like, I'm just talking about what this guy's potential is and what his future could be like. It's not like he just sucked in a game and I'm like defending, his poor play or something. I'm just saying the guy literally on August 12th turned 19. He's young. But to be that young and to be able to squat 600 plus pounds, to be just a road grader like he is in the run game, this guy's got a lot of potential. He's got potential to be good. He's got to continue to get better pass protecting. That's where Kudus has to continue to get better. And that's just going to come with more reps, primarily because he was playing inside. It's not a crybaby excuse. Just what a terrible way to put something, too. It's like coming at me like that. It's just mean. Why you got to be so mean, Jim? Dustin Hoofman says, heard some rule changes this season, no clock stoppage on first down in first and third quarters and no untimed downs for the same time. There are some changes. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think you might end up with like 6 plays or something. But, I mean, if they pass the ball and it's incomplete, the clock stops. And, there's a lot more passing in college football now. I don't think it's going to make that big of an impact. I do think it's interesting that they're doing all these rules to give you less college football. I thought Josh Pate had a great comment on that about, where are all these people clamoring for shorter games and less football? It's just TV people. And I get you got to pay the bills, you got commercials, but they have amped up the amount of commercials. Like every time there's an opportunity to stop, they stop. Every time there's an opportunity to go to a commercial break, they do it. And I get it. You got to pay the bills. But, I mean, at the expense of taking away more plays in football games, I don't know about that. But I don't know that this is going to be something dramatic, not stopping the clock on the game clock on first downs unless you're at the end of the game. You're still stopping it on incomplete passes. By the way, speaking of paying the bills, Bet Saracen app, I was looking at the games this weekend, or this coming in 10 days basically. I guess that's a Thursday, but August 26th. The best game, the most intriguing game I thought was maybe Vanderbilt, Hawaii, just because it's an SEC team. There's not a lot of great games on that Thursday, but man, the line is 17.5 on that on the Bet Saracen app. The line is 17.5. Vanderbilt went to Honolulu last year and beat those guys like 63-10. Might be something to look at. 17.5 points. Vanderbilt's favored in that one. And the game is in Nashville this year if they get their stadium done. What I heard is just like comically not ready. So we'll see. Don't come at me with like mean stuff in my comments. Why come at me with mean stuff? Especially when you twist things around. Don't be mean. There's going to be plenty of time to get mean. We're in the preseason here, guys. We haven't even started the season. That's when we get angry, right? It's interesting because, everybody's like, what are you predicting right now? Let me know in the comments. What are you predicting Arkansas to do this year? Because the way I look at it is, and again, like I'll get chastised, I think, from the same guy about this one. Like, for me to say 8-4 or something, it's like, I'm not saying that's something that you should be satisfied with. I'm just saying, like, if Arkansas has what I believe, looking at the roster, an SEC roster, they should go 8-4, 4-4, give or take, depending on how the ball bounces. But I don't think it's unreasonable to expect 4-4 and 8-4 for this team, given what they have coming back, and that I think that they are, at worst, an average SEC team. And so that's 4-4 to me. I think they can be better than that. But, like, what is a good season for Arkansas, in your opinion? Because if you win 11 games, to me, that's one of the 10 best teams in Arkansas history. Bobby Petrino won 10 games in 2010 and 11 games in 2011, and people act like he hung the moon. And he was a great coach. Those were great years. But that's how the response to that was, this is amazing, this is incredible. So if that's amazing and that's incredible, then what is good? What's a good season for Arkansas? 9 wins, that's kind of what I think. That's a good season for Arkansas. 10 wins, feeling real good about that, aren't you? That's what I think. Like 10 wins, that's like, this is a great team. But it's also kind of funny, like, because, we might say 8-4. Let's say 8-4 regular season with a chance to win 9 with the bowl game. 8-4. That's all fine. Like, you're like, that's, when you're doing it in the preseason. But when you're in it in the season and they lose a game, even if it's a game that you maybe had them picked losing, and they lose it and it's close, or, they just don't play that well and don't show up or something, I mean, then it's just the emotion, the anger, the disappointment that you feel in the moment. But preseason, you said four losses, and you're like, yeah, I think that would be, that would be acceptable for this team. But when you're in it, no, it's just not. Football's a great sport. It really is. The emotion, the highs and lows. The only thing that just kind of stinks about it is the injuries. It's just, it's part of the game. It's that's why it's so important to build depth. But the emotion of college football enjoy it. I mean, it goes by so fast. Like football season is the fastest time of the year for me because I love it so much, but it just goes. It's suddenly just over. So it's important to remember to enjoy it. Get mad, expect greatness. Expect greatness. I'm always looking at Arkansas. I was like, how can they be great? What are the things that this program needs to do from recruiting, from infrastructure, from support? What are the things that Arkansas needs to do to be great? And I've said before, I think one of the things that's going to help them as a program to have that potential to be great is, first of all, recruiting, NIL, transfer portal. The changes that have come about, Arkansas embraced that. That's how you can change your program. And I think it's important that they brought in 18, now down to 17. A.J. Brathwaite quit the team, obviously. But I think it's important the way they built this program to bring in all those transfers that they did. Now, as you get more stable as a program, and Pittman said they like to bring in 25 high school recruits if it's the right 25. My personal opinion, I kind of think the 2010 formula is right for a stable program, and also counting on the fact that Arkansas needs a little bit to balance things out because they're not right next to Houston or Dallas or New Orleans. Arkansas has to go a little farther away for talent. So the transfer portal and NIL is something that I think can really change things. I thought Marcus Woodson had a really good comment today because I asked him about recruiting. I think he's doing a phenomenal job recruiting. But he says, getting kids to come to Fayetteville is a little more challenging versus Tallahassee or other places he's been, more vacation destination type spots, other places he's been where there are, more direct ways to get there. But they always feel if they can get players to Fayetteville, then they can get them signed. And I think in this day and age with things like NIL and just how the landscape has changed with college football, if you have the right coaches, which I really like this defensive coaching staff, Marcus Woodson, I think Darren Wilson, Travis Williams, all those guys from SEC territories, I think all those guys are really nice additions to the staff to go along with Deke Adams for a little continuity for once on the defensive line. Those guys can recruit and they can hit that portal. I mean, bringing in Jaheim Thomas, Keon Stewart, the two Baylor guys, those are really solid additions for a program that had 9 guys exit from the secondary to bring in 5 like they did, in addition to the recruits that they brought in. And some of that was already done before they got here. But I think they've really reshaped a lot of the things in the secondary. And it was very important to do. I don't even know where I started on that question. O-line and wide receivers. The offensive line, I think, is going to be better than they were last year. I think some of the things that they've done in the weight room, lifting more often, they increase the amount of time that they spend, the days that they lift weights. I think that was part of a problem that they had last year, especially getting the push. I mean, the offensive line was good until they got into the 20 or short yardage or goal line, and then it was just like could not get an inch. I mean, time and time again. So that was a big struggle for them. I mentioned I like Kudus. I think Devon Manuel has so much potential. I mean, 6'9", 310. This dude has a lot of potential. Cody Kennedy said he may have said 390 when he first got here, but he would be stunned if he wasn't tipping the scales over 400 pounds. He's completely transformed himself. He got Bo Limmer back. Bo Limmer's stronger than he's ever been, and he's always pretty much been the strongest guy on the team for a long time. So I think maybe when he was like a redshirt freshman, Jonathan Marshall was the strongest guy on the team. So Bo Limmer's back. Brady Latham. Latham has, 36 starts under his belt, something like that for his career. I think Limmer has 29. 28 of Bo Limmer's starts were at guard. And the last one, the 29th start, was at center. So I think that was good for Bo to be able to get that game in under his belt, knowing what to expect, playing a game at center, heading into the spring, heading into now. So, and then, Joshua Braun, I think maybe kind of the wild card there. I have not paid a whole lot of attention to Joshua Braun. In fact, it was brought to my attention because Curtis was writing a story on Joshua Braun, and I do all the photos. All the photos you see on HawgSports, I do, except for like game stuff. That's generally USA Today sports images. But like practice photos and stuff, I take all those. And so Curtis was writing an article on Braun, and I hadn't taken a picture of him. So I took a lot of pictures of Joshua Braun today, but for some reason I just haven't focused in on Braun a whole lot. I've been focused on those tackles a lot. I don't know if that's me like thinking, okay, he's most likely going to be a solid player for him or what. But Braun's 6'6", 348. He's the biggest starter on the offensive line for him. So, I mean, I feel good about the individual players on the rosters, and I feel like they're coming together better as a team. I don't think there was any question there was some strife in the locker room last year, and I feel like they've made a big point of emphasis to improve on that. Don't know until we see the product on the field, but believe this will be one of the best defenses the Razorbacks had in quite some time. I mean, I just would like to see an average defense, just an average defense. I mean, if they're average, I think the offense will be pretty explosive. So if they're one of the best they put on the field in a long time. And when was the last really solid defense that Arkansas had? Probably 2013, the year they had Martrell Spate, Darius Philon, Trey Flowers, Tevin Mitchell. All those guys went to the NFL. They were all drafted. That was a good defense. That was the last time that Arkansas, where you said, man, they got a really, really good defense, like really good. And they've had, I think they were like 10 and 11th in total defense and scoring defense that year. They've had other defenses that have had their moments and stuff, but like throughout the course of a season, that was up there. TJ Lewis says defense helps win championships. It definitely helps win. I think the quote is defense wins championships, but you got to have offense too. Sure. Dustin Hoofman says also strength and conditioning changes. How many people can run over 20 miles an hour now? A lot of them. But, there's football speed and track speed, I've seen plenty of fast guys who couldn't play football that well. So, but yeah, they do have some good speed on the team, and they're faster than they were last year. We know that. We know that they're faster than they were last year. Clint Stacy Patterson says, what is your opinion of the O-line and wide receivers? I think I covered that pretty much. Dustin Hoofman says, heard some of the rule changes this season, no clock stoppage. Am I going backwards? Facebook just bounces all over the place. Yep, it bounced me. How do the punters look? So I was 37 and 31. I was watching them and clocking some of their punts, and I'm getting like 4.7, 4.95 hang times pretty consistently with those guys. I haven't seen them just shank one. Now, who knows what happens when the lights come on? They have got to be better punting. If you go back and look at all those close games that they lost last year, every single one of them had a punting issue. Every single one of them had a punting issue. Whether it was a 20-yard shank or, an opportunity to pin somebody deep and you just boot it out of the back of the end zone, not even close. They all had punting issues last year. So I don't know what it is, but like I can go back in my head and probably recall every punter that Arkansas has had going back to Matt Waite. I think Matt Waite played at Lake Hamilton. And that's like, mid-90s? And Arkansas always had a good quality punter. And then suddenly one day they just didn't, and it feels like it's just been forever since they've had a guy that you can always count on this guy. I mean, it's been since Sam Irwin-Hill maybe? Or maybe the guy after him. Was it Toby Baker after him? He was a solid punter. Maybe it's been since him. I mean, I don't know what it is, and Max Fletcher has a big leg. Like he can boot the hell out of the ball, but it's just the inconsistency. It's just like it's great to boot it, but it's a game, and you're at midfield and you decide to punt it, and it's a 20-yarder. All right, I got to find my spot here. Okay, that was it. That was from Brian Malone on the punters. Matthew Lowe says, interested to see if Ian Jaffrard plays some. That man is huge. He is enormous. Like, he walked by me. I think I mentioned this on the last show, but he's just everything from his noggin to his feet. I mean, this dude, he's a big 6'5", 394. I mean, that's all you have to say there. It's surprising to me how he actually moves. I was expecting him to be like, I use the word dumpy kind of sometimes when I describe people who are, athletes who are, maybe a little, their ankles are like cankles, kind of stuff. But he's not that. I was surprised at how well he's actually put together. And I mean, he's just a massive dude. I don't know if he's going to play a lot this year. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with injuries and stuff. You know, there, as we were saying, injury. Somebody's going to get you. You could easily lose a starter in camp, and they've had some guys out. As part of our deal to be able to watch practices, we're not supposed to comment on all the injury stuff until Sam Pittman does, but we know Devon Manuel. He's commented on him, obviously. Sam Bakke, that's a tough one. Because let me tell you something. Bakke is one of the least talked about 4-star receivers that I have ever come across. Like, nobody was talking about him last year as a freshman. He was a 4-star recruit. And this year, guys, I mean, every time I looked up, Bakke was catching a deep ball for 50, 60 yards, and I'm talking against Snacks or Jaheim Singletary, like guys who are going to start for him. Like, he was making some plays now, and 6'3", 205, good-looking kid, and now has the injury. They didn't say specifically the type of knee injury, but it's the kind that keeps you out the whole season. I think we all know what that is. But that's tough, but thank goodness they have Isaiah Satania and Bryce Stevens, Isaac TeSlaa, Tyrone Broden, Andrew Armstrong. I could see big things for Andrew Armstrong. He has looked really good these last few days. And TeSlaa is just, I don't want to say taken for granted, but he's just like consistent. Watch Kudus dominate, says Bobby Hobson. I think Kudus has so much ability. He really does. And to be so young. It's a crybaby excuse. Dustin Hoofman says 10 wins, including the bowl game. Arkansas goes 2-2, 4-game stretch, wins against A&M and Ole Miss. So I've said before, if Arkansas goes 2-2 in that stretch, then I like them to win 10 games because that is such a brutal stretch. If they have the chops to go 2-2 in that stretch, watch out. Michael Polk says 9-3, 5-3. I have a feeling we have a top 20 defense. Calm down, Michael. Let's don't get too crazy. I think that they're going to have a pretty good. I mean, it starts on the defensive line, right? I mean, I haven't seen a defensive line like that, and I've seen good players on the defensive line. I mentioned Trey Flowers, Darius Philon. That was part of a pretty good defensive line. But was Dietrich Wise a young player on that team also? In Dietrich Wise and Jeremiah Ledbetter, they've had really good defensive linemen, but just the idea that it's like 3 deep, I mean, there are years where that third group would be starters for them, or the second group would be starters for them. I think maybe if I highlight these questions. Could Dominic Johnson get back to form and be the second back? Dominic Johnson looks so much better than he did last year. Like, I remember seeing him out there, and it's like, man, he looks kind of a little chunky to me. But he was moving pretty well, when he came out there last year. And that would have been, like, when he came out there last year would be about a year ago on Monday because he didn't go through spring. So, to me, he looks better physically. His physique looks different. Even though he's listed at the same weight, his physique looks different. I think Dominic could. There was actually, so the first day I saw him do 2 running backs was yesterday, and somebody said that they did it the day before too, but the first time I saw it personally, and I'm all over, there's 2 practice fields, but the first time I saw it was yesterday, and there at one time they have Dominic Johnson and Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson, and they had him like right here, right by him, not in the back behind him or anything, so it's Dominic Johnson, 252, KJ Jefferson, 247, Rocket Sanders, 242. I mean, that's a big backfield. But, yeah, I think Dominic can absolutely. He's still wearing the knee brace. Sam Pittman said he could ditch it. So I don't know if it's a comfort thing or what. But it's got to come off at some point, before the season starts. Michael Polk says, how much blitzing you think they'll do this year? We have to have pressure on the QB to help the DBs. It'll be interesting to see how much pressure they just get with the 4 defensive linemen and if they feel like they really need to bring a lot. However, Travis Williams, based on his history at UCF, likes to bring pressure. they would do a lot of cover zero and stuff there. So Pittman says he's not too keen, I don't think, on cover zero, but I think we are going to see some pressure this year. They didn't generate a lot of sacks at UCF last year. The year before, I think they had 36, which is a pretty decent number. Arkansas had 42, which I believe is a program record. That's a lot of sacks. It's amazing they had so many sacks and such poor pass defense. Does Clark look significantly bigger than last year to you? So I looked at Clark today. I kind of sized him up a little bit. You can definitely tell in his shoulders and arms that he is more muscular than he's been in the past. No question about it. He doesn't, Clark doesn't have like the same type of frame as like Al Walcott, but Al Walcott's listed at 6'2". I'd say he's probably about 6'1", but he's probably like 213 or something like that, 210. And Clark is, he's put on 12 pounds since last season. You can tell he's never going to be just like a hulking safety back there. But 12 pounds of muscle is going to go a long way for him because, first of all, I think it's a positive move for him to go from corner to safety. I think that's a more natural fit for him. But where he struggled is, stopping the run, getting, going and facing up against a 220-pound running back, and how that's going to go. So now for him to have more strength on him, I think is going to help him a whole lot. Matthew Lowe says, wasn't Dylan Breeding a good punter? Dylan Breeding was, but Dylan was back in Petrino age, right? Yeah. Let's see when Dylan Breeding was. I'm pretty sure he was back, before Sam Irwin Hill and Toby Baker. Let's see. Dylan Breeding. I don't have a classification from him. 2012-ish. He was 2012. He was second team All-SEC. So he was Petrino era. Yeah, he was another good one. He was a well-regarded guy as a recruit. Jim Stahlcup says, how about the O-line? I think I pretty much covered the O-line. Do we have ability at each spot on the line? How about depth on the line? I don't think the second-team offensive line is the same quality as the second-team defensive line. I mean, and think about it. You're talking about a senior in Zach Williams, a super senior. I guess Shad Stewart's a true senior. So you got a super senior at one end, another senior at the other end, and then who are you talking about as a second team? I mean, it could be a combination of a lot of people. Is it Kevy Rose? Is it Tank Booker? Torian Carter? Eric Gregory? I mean, there's a lot of guys on the defensive line for him. So, to me, the backup offensive line, which I think is some guys with promise, Andrew Chamblee, but he's been working with the first team, because Manuel's been out. Marion Harris, who I think still has got to cook a little bit longer, but I think he has so much potential. Takias Crawford, who's obviously a guy that's probably will help them this year, probably going to be their next offensive lineman, the six-man type guy, can play guard or tackle. They've been working him at both in camp. Center, I think you got Amari Wiggins there, who's a newer guy. We don't know his whole much. Amari's not a massive offensive lineman. He's probably 6'3". He's not just a huge guy out there. So I think you take a little bit of a step back on the offensive line, no question, from the first team. But I think it's a bigger step back from the first team offensive line to the second team offensive line versus the first team defensive line to the second team defensive line. All right. I'm going to cut it at questions right here, and I'm going to go backwards until I caught up to the next one. Garrett Isabel, it's the last question we're taking. Call me crazy, but LSU, A&M, Ole Miss doesn't scare me. I mean, scare is a strong word. Like, who scares you? Georgia is scary. Going at Tuscaloosa, playing Alabama, those are scary games, So who scares you? I know they can go to Baton Rouge and beat LSU. I've seen them do it. I've seen them do it at night. Texas A&M, the fact that the Texas A&M record has gotten the way it has is just ridiculous. I mean, there's so many close games they've lost to them over the years. Ole Miss and Oxford, that's not scary. I mean, these are all games you have to come and bring your A game. Anytime you go on the road, you have to bring your A-plus game anytime you do that. But who's scaring this particular team? I mean, Alabama and Tuscaloosa, Scare is a strong word because they played Alabama tough year before last in Tuscaloosa. I mean, they played them tough. I don't know if you say anybody should just scare you. I wouldn't want to play Georgia in Athens again. That game certainly did not play out very well. Scott Kobe Reeves says, have you seen enough to be excited, or are we still waiting to see how it's going to play out? I haven't seen enough, no. So I can tell you a lot of stuff from people on the inside that have access, direct access. What I've seen in practices, which has been generally probably 30 minutes most days. Today was shorter because they had a shorter practice. But I haven't seen like tackling to the ground. They haven't let us watch any of that. I've watched thud up. I've watched physical stuff with the offensive and defensive lines. But as far as like a running back coming through the hole and getting taken to the ground, I have not seen that yet. So have I seen enough? No. Based on what I've seen, based on what I hear from people, I think they got a solid squad. I mean, it's harder today to predict what the season is going to be, but when I look at individual position, that's how I kind of approach the the camp. When I look at individual players, like they got some players on this team, they really do, and they've got some depth. And it seems like the team bond is there, and I felt like that was just missing last year, and that's not something I ever would have predicted. You go back and watch the Texas walk and talk after I did that, like where I was feeling about that program, the state of the program at that point versus what happened last year, losing that Liberty game. Never would have expected a Liberty loss. You should never lose to a program like Liberty. No disrespect to Liberty, but this is Arkansas and the SEC at home. You should never lose that game. Not a program that's, established. It just shouldn't happen. Never want to see that again. That Pittman can't lose another game like that. He just can't. I mean, people will turn. People will turn quick, And I think my personal opinion on Pittman is Arkansas has the right man for the job. I really think that they do. And Sam Pittman, from the way the program's run, the people that he's brought in. I mean, I can look at, coaching staffs and what's going on, in the program, what I hear around the program and tell you they've got some problems here or they have some deficiencies or there's some issues. And, I saw it some with Bielema's program, not on the level at all that I saw it with Chad's. And that was one reason I was so hard is because I did not feel like that there was progress in the right direction. I didn't feel like the players – I didn't feel like they would fight for him at all. And the program was just in disarray everywhere I looked. With Pittman, I don't see those same problems. I saw some issues pop up last year. I also saw 26 players hit the transfer portal and several staff changes. And I think all that, not all of it. There's some players that just left, and there were some, coaches that just left. But half of what they did in the offseason was to fix some of those issues that they were having. And I think a lot of it starts with Ben Souders. I think a lot of it starts with Marcus Woodson, Darren Wilson, Travis Williams. I think those are all big additions for this in terms of, the culture of the team, the bond of the team improving, which I just didn't think I would see under Pittman. But Pittman's one man also, and that's something that I've kind of learned about it. It's Bobby Petrino had his finger on every single thing. That's just kind of coach he was. Bielema, going through every coach. Pittman, I feel like has viewed his job as more of an overseer, of putting people in the place to succeed. And that's really, in most management styles, that's what you need to do. Petrino just handled it differently. I think that's one reason when Petrino left, since he did have his finger on everything just imploded. You'd like to think, if Pittman moved on, and I've said this before, I think an ideal situation for Pittman would be to continue coaching at Arkansas, have success, and pass it on to somebody. I don't know who that would be. I'm a big Marcus Woodson fan, but I don't know who that would be. But I think in this landscape of college football, the last thing you want to do is start over with a new coaching staff. If you can avoid that and you can promote from within, because you can lose half your team in an instant. And maybe you do some good work in the transfer portal and stuff, but, I mean, how many people work for Sam Pittman? How many people work under him? 60? 60-something maybe? And that's not including the players. I mean, maybe they're employees now. I don't know. But I'm talking about, like, people who, are defined as employees. And, basically, 2/3 of those people will be finding new jobs. It's a lot of changeover. And usually that first year is a struggle. Now, it's different with the transfer portal, but obviously the ideal situation, is it kind of goes like that, because that means you've been winning. You got a culture. You've got a way of doing things. And, you just kind of seamlessly, ideally, go to the next phase with a new coach. I'm not saying that's happening anytime soon with Pittman. I mean, he's just 62. But that's kind of how I think about it. I know I hear a lot about Tesla and Armstrong. Do you think Broden is underrated a bit? I think he'll have a good year. No, I think Broden will do some good things. I think it'll be Tesla, Armstrong, 1, 2, 1A, 1B, and then Broden, maybe the next guy. In terms of the outside receivers, I think Isaiah Satania will catch a lot of balls also out of the slot. But yeah, I think those are I think Tesla, Broden, Armstrong, Satania are the top 4 guys right now. And I would have put Bakke in that conversation, maybe Bryce Stevens also. Jaden Wilson's doing some good things too. But to me, the 4 are, those that I just mentioned. Michael Polk says, what are my toss-up games? I mean, any toss-up, like going at Baton Rouge, they're going to be picked to lose pretty defiantly. I mean, they're going to be picked to lose that game. So do I say and I think they can win it, but I don't know if I could say that's a toss-up game, because Ole Miss, Texas A&M, I mean, any game away from home against a team that I feel like they would beat at home maybe would be considered a toss-up. Florida, what's Florida going to look like? What's Auburn going to look like when they get to Auburn? I mean, every game in the SEC is kind of a toss-up. Yeah, there's some questions like that. Which games scare you the most this year? Scare me. I just don't know that I would say somebody scares me, except for, going to Tuscaloosa is always tough. Somebody twisted my words around in the comments also that I said I'm never going to pick them to beat Alabama. That doesn't mean I don't think they can ever beat Alabama. It just means, and that's not what I said. I said I'm never going to pick them to win, as long as Saban's got this thing going the way it is, to go to Tuscaloosa and win. I'm not going to make that pick just because it hasn't happened. I didn't say it can't ever happen, but it's amazing what people hear sometimes. We will end up top 10 at the end of the year, 10-2. Arkansas is due for a 10-2. I hear you, Trey Andrews. Arkansas is due for a 10-2. It happens every once in a while. It hadn't happened in a while. I don't think that I could say certain teams that they have are never going to win 10 games. I would not say this about this team. I would not say that this team has no chance to win 10 games. I wouldn't say that. I don't think they're going to win 10, but there have been teams where I would say there's no way in hell they're winning 10. I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. I would be surprised if this team went 7. I see a lot of national pundits. It's kind of a, not against anybody, but that's kind of a safe pick for Arkansas to say they'll win 7. I just think, you got maybe the best quarterback in the SEC coming back, Rocket Sanders. I think they'll be okay on the offensive line, especially considering I didn't think they were that great on the offensive line last year, and they won 7 games and lost 4 games by 9 points. Okay. I think we've caught everything. Jeremy Cook says, what are the chances of the Hogs having a Heisman and runner-up candidates? Extremely slim. It just is. To win the Heisman, so I have a Heisman vote. I'm not going to vote, in most cases, for a quarterback unless they, win their division. To me, you need to win your division as a quarterback. Now, maybe a team like Arkansas that hasn't necessarily been a program that wins the division every few years. Maybe I would have some leniency on that thought. Like if KJ put up just absurd numbers, maybe I would change my thought on that. But that goes back to Tim Tebow as a redshirt sophomore, and everybody made a big deal about the first sophomore to win the Heisman, even though Darren McFadden was 2 weeks younger than Tim Tebow. Nobody talked about it. But everybody made a big deal of that, and I just feel like the push from ESPN to get Tim Tebow the Heisman that year, that frustrated me. And the fact that they also finished third in the East. He's a quarterback. He's the quarterback on a team that won the national championship the year before when he wasn't starting, and then he starts the next year, and just because he gets a bunch of goal line carries, see what you're doing, you get me. That's something from forever ago, and it's getting me riled up. But that kind of goes back to my philosophy on, where my Heisman votes are going to go. And I'm just not going to vote a quarterback, especially a quarterback at a, program that's been winning, if they finish third in their division like Florida did that year. Don't get me riled up here. All right, everybody. Appreciate you joining me. We'll be back with you guys. I'm not sure if we'll start the regular Monday, Thursday deal next week or not. We might start doing that. I just haven't decided. It just depends on how things go because we are still a couple of weeks away from a game when that point gets here. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. Appreciate all the new members that have signed up here lately. You've been great. I appreciate that. You've got some great opportunities. It is $1 for 1 month right now at HawgSports, HawgSports.com. So if you want to get in and follow the season with us at HawgSports, all our inside information on a more regular basis, not just every once in a while when I do the show, then sign up at HawgSports.com. 24/7 Sports Network. There's a reason it's 24/7 Sports. Our doors don't close. It's not like anything else. I mean, I'm always on call. So go check us out at HawgSports.com. Just $1 right now for your first month. If you haven't signed up for our HawgSports newsletter, you can do that. We'll send all our free content to your email inbox. You can also sign up for free text alerts where we put out any breaking news that we have going on that will be sent to your phone so you can know where your buddies are. Those are both free services that we offer. We do free content. We do VIP content, 2 different ways to get your Razorback coverage. But if you want the in-depth stuff, you need a VIP membership at HawgSports. All right, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Just go do that real quick. Even if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, just go pop over to Apple Podcasts, throw us that 5-star review or whatever podcast service you listen to. We would love to have that from you. All right, everybody. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for tuning in. And this has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.